Robby, I'm very excited to hear what's on your radar.
Monkeypox. There have now been more than 14,000 cases of it in the United States since this pandemic began a few months ago. That's an alarming statistic because while the disease isn't particularly fatal, in fact, there have been 0 deaths reported in the U.S. from it so far, it is really painful and it can leave scars from the rashes and the lesions that appear on the skin when you get it. Now, we already have a vaccine that works for monkeypox, but the American public health bureaucracy is already behind the curve when it comes to administering this vaccine. Indeed, the FDA and the CDC already repeating many of their early COVID mistakes, and they're not alone, because the mainstream media is also repeating so many of the things it got wrong about COVID. Most notably, many of the media are trying to scare parents into thinking that their kids are in danger of catching monkeypox as they return to school this fall. In fact, a recent stunningly bad article in the New York Times suggested that parents who are worried about monkeypox should just go ahead and stick with all the COVID mitigation strategies, washing down everything, social distancing, and of course, masks, and more masks. The Times article was titled "How to Protect Against Monkeypox as School Starts," and it does acknowledge that monkeypox is not spread anywhere nearly as easily as COVID, and that so far children are not at any statistical risk of catching it. So maybe we could have stopped there. But then the Times reporter had this to say: parents who are concerned about the virus may also be relieved to know that many pandemic precautions and behaviors can be repurposed to protect children against monkeypox. Wearing masks in crowded indoor areas, avoiding sharing personal use items, increasing the frequency of hand washing, and isolating at home when you're sick. This advice isn't coming in a vacuum, of course. It's coming at a time when most school districts across the country are bringing kids back without a masking requirement. That's not true everywhere, of course. Schools in the District of Columbia, some of them are keeping masks in place. But a lot of other districts have begrudgingly acknowledged that even the CDC no longer recommends this in many cases. Powerful teachers' unions, however, would prefer to keep kids in masks, or better yet, have school remote or maybe just canceled entirely. But right now, they've mostly lost that battle. But enter monkeypox. We all know exactly what the media is doing. It's scaring people in service of pushing masks and other annoying public health measures, because Team Blue wants people scared, wants them locked down, wants them isolated, wants to push these measures they've been pushing for 3 years. They're not stopping now. Just look at these headlines. So here's one from Newsweek, actually. More monkeypox cases found in kids as school looms. Salon said as students return to school, fears of monkeypox transmission linger. Here was a local news site. Experts concerned about monkeypox as kids head back to school. And then my favorite from Curbed, I've been bitten, I've been scratched by kids. That's quotes from teachers on the lack of monkeypox guidelines. Since they've been bitten and scratched in the past, obviously going to get monkeypox. Fear sells. It's the media's golden goose. They love to terrify readers. But don't listen to them. That's because everything we know about monkeypox transmission so far tells us there's little reason to be worried about going back to school. Telling kids to wear masks to avoid monkeypox is insultingly stupid advice. So far, overwhelmingly, monkeypox is spread by men who have sex with other men, often in settings where they have multiple or anonymous sexual partners. Monkeypox is not only a sexually transmitted disease, but so far, sexual transmission among a certain subset of the population is responsible for something like 98% of all cases. So yes, it's possible to contract monkeypox via non-sexual contact. Several minors, including one just over the weekend in New York State, have done just that. They got the disease. We don't know exactly how, but non-sexual contact is certainly a likelier mode of spread in those cases. But still, we are talking about just a handful of cases among the 14,000. There's no reason to think monkeypox is easily transmitted via non-sexual means. It's theoretically possible, yes, but it's certainly not so likely that we need to routinely mask up out of some overabundance of caution in schools. What we need to do is make these vaccines and therapeutics readily available for the at-risk population, men who have sex with men. Monkeypox, unlike COVID, does not spread very easily. So if we vaccinate a substantial proportion of the at-risk population, we will actually benefit from a herd immunity effect where these spillover cases that are already very rare of non-sexually transmitted monkeypox infections, those are going to become even more infrequent. It would be crazy, truly crazy, to do anything different in schools this fall because of monkeypox. Only a media that is desperate to scare people would at this point even suggest that masking kids to stop monkeypox is something schools should be worried about or focused on. And I'm surprised at all the headlines I found from people in the media. I guess I shouldn't be surprised because, kind of freaking out about very trivial dangers. And it's not a trivial danger, again, if you fall into that very specific category, men who have sex with men, often in public settings, they should get absolutely vaccinated. But the general population, there will be a case here or there, but there's no reason to think there are going to be like large outbreaks because of that. It's transmitted most easily through sexual contact, maybe occasionally non-sexual contact, but there's no reason to be like, yeah, maybe the kids should just wear masks when they go back to schools, just in case. But I'm hearing that already, and you're going to hear more of it as the school year really gets underway.
So I'm going to ask you the question I ask you almost every week when you cover this stuff so well, which is why? Why are they doing this? Why?
Right. Why? It's a great question. It's a hard question to answer. I'm convinced that the powers behind Team Blue, media, teachers' unions, the relevant voices for this conversation, specifically on schools, they are just totally set on being good, follow the science people. It's like a tribal identifier. If you were to give any ground on masking and social distancing, et cetera, it's like you're like all of a sudden you're a pro-Trump person or something. Like that is how tied up in their identity following these public health guidelines are, following the science, obeying the science. Even though that's not what the science says anymore. It's not what the CDC guidelines say. And when you make your whole personality, your whole social identity about being part of a tribe where we distinguish ourselves or we identify ourselves by those who are most willing to undergo public health disease mitigation efforts that are over the top and annoying to many people, then you're going to continue to do it. And you're going to feel, I guess, maybe more like you have to do it even more now that nobody else is doing it because you're a true believer. You're still part of the team, part of the effort. That's the best I can do to kind of explain it. I think I think the teachers union specifically really bought into the idea that teachers are in danger from their kids, treating some kids like they're disease vectors. Obviously, many teachers don't feel that way at all, but the ones who kind of have power in this organization, Randy Weingarten would have kept schools closed. She'd still keep them closed if they were up to her. She said basically until there was COVID-0, which is never going to happen. So that was their level of, willing to go to that extreme among the leadership. And so then, of course, if you're willing to do that, of course you're going to say, yeah, put on masks for monkeypox. Why not?
It's so crazy because it used to be like a joke that when you wanted to attack your political opponents, you would say, what about the children, right? Do you hate children?
Right.
But here it seems like again and again, the left's position is to sacrifice the children on the altar of their hatred of Trump, right? Their woke ideology, their embarrassment about, for example, where crime is happening and who its victims are, right? And who the perpetrators are, or where monkeypox is happening, right? Like there's this weird thing where if they feel that the truth is embarrassing somehow to their agenda, let's just make sure that the children pay the price, right? It's like this weird flex. And I just don't understand how, that went from being a joke about a political attack to they're really willing to sacrifice children over and over and over again. It's not nothing to keep kids home from school. It's not nothing to ask children to wear masks. It's not nothing to ask disabled children to wear masks. Like, you would think that in a society that prides itself on its compassion, disabled children would have the number one position of like who we have to be taking care of and protecting and making sure that they're not being harmed. And yet they're the sacrificial lamb on all of these like really terrible agendas.
Well, and some people will just refuse to concede that there are downsides from following these measures. There were school district officials I think in California, maybe in New York, who said during remote learning, Well, they're spending more time with their families. There's family knowledge too, so that's important. So, what's even the problem with just keeping kids at home for a year? With masks, there are, so-called experts who will say, oh yeah, no, it's not harmful. They like wearing them. They want to wear them. It makes shy kids feel better or something like that. What about learning to read? What about, under all of us instinctively pull down our masks when we were wearing them and you couldn't understand another person. So if we do that, I imagine some of them have trouble, understanding perhaps what their teachers are saying. So it's just the refusal to concede that it was a lot to ask. Especially for kids who didn't have a lot to fear from COVID. And just like COVID, right now, have virtually nothing, statistically nothing to fear from monkeypox, nor does really anyone else outside of the category we discussed, a category for which there are vaccines, and it seems like it's absolutely a good idea to take them, and that will have socially beneficial effects. We can get this pandemic under control, but we don't need to worry about the back to school effort being hamstrung by monkeypox. But some crazy mutation for this virus. I guess the situation theoretically could be different in the future. We know what the situation is right now. Let's not panic, please.
Amen.
All right, more Rising when we return.